Well, ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please? Our session is about to begin. Please have a nice seat. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Be upon you, we are delighted to welcome you to Universitas Tidar for the second International Conference on Agricultural, Nutraceutical, and Food Science 2024.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's conference is the second conference that held by the Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Tidar. The conference brings together academia, researchers, practitioners, and parties who are responsible for delivering the topic, empowering the local agricultural resource management to achieve Sustainable Development Goals 2030.
I am Yasinta Laila and
Sulan Gibran,
your Master of Ceremony for today. Before continue, let's give applause for today's conference.
First of all, we would like to greet
His Excellency, the Vice Rector for Academic Affairs of Universitas Tidar, Profesor Dr. Suyitno, Sarjana Teknik, Master of Science.
the Vice Rector of General Affairs and Finance of Universitas Tidar, Dr. Astuti, Magister Pendidikan.
The Vice Rector for Student and Alumni Affairs of Universitas Tidar, Profesor Dr. Parmin, Sarjana Pendidikan, Magister Pendidikan.
The Dean of Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Tidar, Profesor Dr. Joko Srisno, Sarjana Pertanian, Magister Pertanian.
The Deans and Officials of Universitas Tidar,
Distinguished Keynote Speaker, Professor of Agribusiness Institut Pertanian Bogor, Chairman of the Indonesian Agribusiness Association, Profesor Dr. Insinyur Bayu Krishnamurti, Magister Sains.
distinguished plenary speakers, exploring the carbohydrate metabolism, relate genes in giant gurami fish, Dr. Dian Novitasari, Sarjana Perikanan, Magister Sains from Universitas Hasanuddin.
Utilization of agricultural product as a feed ingredient in poultry, Professor Dr. Loh Tek Chuen from University Putra Malaysia.
Carbon deposition by natural ecosystem, agriculture crops, Professor Elena Volkova from Tula State University, Russia.
And of course, last but not least, our beloved moderators, presenters, and all the participants. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me first to read the agenda for today's conference.
The first agenda is the opening session.
The second is the singing of Indonesian National Anthem, Indonesia Raya, continued by singing Hymne Universitas Tidar.
The third is committee chairman report.
The fourth is the welcoming speech by the Dean of Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Tidar.
The fifth is opening speech by Vice Rector for Academic Affairs of Universitas Tidar, Profesor Dr. Suyitno, Sarjana Teknik, Master of Science.
The sixth agenda is the opening show, the traditional dance by Puspa Pirata.
The seventh agenda is the main session of the conference, that is the speech from our keynote speaker.
Also, presentation by our plenary speakers, then followed by discussion plenary, led by our moderators.
Next is ceremonial handover of the plaque and certificate of recognition to the keynote and plenary speakers.
The next is the break time.
And we will end up the conference by parallel session of the presentation.
Excellencies, participants, ladies and gentlemen, for a brief moment, we would like to invite you to rise and sing the Indonesian National Anthem, Indonesia Raya, continued by singing Hymne Universitas Tidar. May all we rise. You may be seated now. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, moving to the next agenda, we are going to listen to a welcoming speech delivered by the Committee Chairman Report, Sabrina Silmi Kori Tartila, Master of Science. The floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. His Excellency, Vice Rector for Academic and Cooperation, Universitas Tidar, Professor Dr. Suyitno, MSc, and also Honorable Mayor of Magelang, represented by Regional Secretary of Kota Magelang, Hamzah Kholifi, SOS MSI, Honorable Yayasan Borobudur, Mr. Ibrahim Nawawi, Honorable Dean Faculty of Agriculture, Professor Joko Sutrisno, Honorable Vice Deans of Faculty of Agriculture, Dr. Lis Hartati, and also Dr. Triswarni Wayudiningsih, Honorable Keynote Speakers, Professor Bayu Krishnamurti from IPB University, Honorable Invited Speakers, Professor Allah Tek Chun from University Putra Malaysia, Dr. Dian Novitasari from Universitas Hasanuddin Makassar, and also Professor Elena Volkova from Tula University, Russia. Also, honorable stakeholders from governments and private sectors, participants, colleagues, lecturers, staffs, and students. I am overly delighted to invite you to our second International Conference on Agriculture, Nutraceuticals, Food Science, in 2024, or we can usually call it as ICAN 2024. This conference, once again, is held in Universitas Tidar, Magelang, on October 23, 2024, by the Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Tidar. As the next stepping stone from the first conference in 2022, this event has upgraded to a new level where many scientists, lecturers, students, governments, private sectors can actually face, communicate, share, and also present their current work and project online or offline to gain more insights and ideas on various studies including agriculture, animal science, aquaculture, food science, nutritional science, and pharmaceuticals. That really actually represents our study programs in Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Tidar. Through the current theme for this conference, empowering the local agriculture resource management to achieve Sustainable Development Goals 2030, we would like to exchange ideas, discuss, and discover the potential agriculture resource from our and your local resource in the local regions to support the local, regional, national, and even worldwide for the sustainable condition, either socially, ecologically, and also economically. As we have announced our event since August, there are many presenters and participants at 340 people across the globe, from Indonesia, from Malaysia, from India, from Africa, and from Russia. And also from Indonesia itself, it across from Sumatra to Papua Islands. And we noticed that we really highly appreciate to all of your participation in joining this event, either offline or online. And also, we hope that you guys can gain more knowledge from the very end, which is the oral presentation, that you can choose to enter the room available with the topic in agriculture and also food science and nutritional science. Finally, let us embark this journey with a shared commitment to achieve sustainability, leveraging, and collective knowledge and efforts to achieve the SDGs by 2023, starting from learning together as colleagues through this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sobrina, for the welcoming speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, moving to the next agenda, we are going to listen a welcoming speech by the Dean of Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Tidar, Profesor Dr. Joko Sutrisno, Sarjana Pertanian, Magister Pertanian. The floor is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. His Excellency, the keynote speaker of this event, Professor Bayu Krishnamurti. He is a professor of agribusiness policy, PP University, and now he is a chairman of the Indonesia Agribusiness Association. And Mr. Bayu, and the former Vice Minister of Trade Indonesia. And His Excellency, the Vice Rector for Academic and Cooperation, Universitas Tidar, Professor Suyetno. And the Honorable, the Mayor of Magelang, represented by Regional Secretary of Kota Magelang, Mr. Hamzah Kholifi, SOS MSI, the Honorable Vice Dean Faculty of Agriculture, Dr. Lilis Hartati, and Dr. Triswarni Wahyudiningsih, and the Honorable invited speaker this event, Professor Loh Tek Swen from University Putra Malaysia, and Mrs. Dr. Dian Novitasari from Hasanuddin University, and Professor Elena Volkova from Tula State University, Russia. And honorable stakeholder from government and private sector, participant, colleague, lecturer, staff, and student of Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Tidar. First of all, let us express our gratitude to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for by His grace and blessing, we are able to gather here in good health and attend the second international conference of agricultural, nutraceutical, and food science 2024 ya. I'm sorry. With them empowering the management of local agricultural resources to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal 2030. Yeah. I'm truly honored and delighted to welcome all of you to this significant event. This seminar organized by the Faculty of Agriculture serves as an important platform for academic researchers and professionals to discuss innovation and development in this field of agriculture Nutraceutical and Food Science. The presence of speakers and participants from various countries with diverse backgrounds is expected to make Icanfs a constructive platform for the exchange of ideas and thought. We believe that every contribution made will broaden our perspective and have a positive impact on the advancement of knowledge and society, particularly in the field of agriculture, nutraceutical, and food science. I would like to extend my gratitude to the organizing committee for their hard work in preparing this event, as well as to all the sponsors and partners who have provided support. I hope the seminar will run smoothly and bring great benefit to all of us. Let us make the best use of this opportunity to learn, share, and strengthen the relationship between our institutions. Finally, thank you for attending the second International Conference on Agriculture, Nutraceutical, and Food Sciences. Happy discussion and may this event success. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Joko Strisno, for the welcoming speech.
Excellencies participants, ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to listen to the opening speech delivered by Vice Rector of Universitas Tidar and officially open the international conference. Please warm welcome to Professor Dr. Suyitno. The floor is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. I think this is one word that important in our life. Why? Because in this morning we can meet each other in this building in GKU Mr. Supartono, Dr. Supartono, ya. Okay. First of all, I would like to say welcome to Universitas Tidar and also for participants from Malaysia because we have speaker from Malaysia, Professor Dr. Loh Tik Chuen. I hope correct I spell your name. Welcome to Universitas Tidar and also welcome to Magelang. Of course, I have to mention all of the keynote speaker in this morning and also from the local government that represent our city major that in this morning cannot attend this meeting. This event, International Conference of Agricultural, Nutraceutical, and Food Science, I think is important topics, specifically for Indonesia, that food is something very important almost for all country. And this faculty of Agricultural in Tidar University, this morning, organized an important event that we call Second International Conference. I would be glad if this conference can discuss important topics specifically on food security, because for our country that is very important topic. And we hope that in the future we are not only, or we do not only talk about the finding, the research about this topic, but we hope also in the future we have innovation in the topic of agricultural, specifically on food security. So that is why I'm Vice Rector for Academic and Cooperation. Very happy to be part of this meeting and hope we can continue this event in the next time, in the next year, with broad audience, also broad participant. Today, I read from the organizing committee that the participant from Malaysia, but also we have speaker also from Tula that will be in online, I think. So in the future, we hope most of speaker come from other countries. So our student will meet a lot of foreigner so that they can speak their language, international language of course, so that our student familiar with international situation or international atmosphere. Today, my task is open this conference by Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This morning, I officially open second international conference on agricultural, nutraceutical, and food science in Tidar University. Finally, I would like to say thank you for all of the organizing committee that this morning already prepare all of things that this conference come through. Finally, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Suyitno, for the opening speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, in this lovely morning now, we would like to present to you the special performance by Puspa Pirata. In Kawi, Puspa means flowers and Pirata means soul. This dance narrates the story of the natural beauty of a woman's soul, symbolizing grace and gentleness. The choreography reflects deep emotion set to the subtle Javanese rhythms, combined with strong accentuation of movement. Puspa Pirata beautifully embodies the captivating elegance of Javanese woman, simple, graceful, soft, charming, and yet strong and influential. Please join me in welcoming our talented dancer, Aulia Devi Arlita and Rindiana Rizka Aprilia.
Hanjrah ingkang puspita arum kirana nengge
you, Aulia and Diniana, for the amazing performance. Let's give them a round of applause for their amazing performance.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we have come to the main agenda that we have been waiting for the speech from Keynote Speaker. Professor of Agribusiness Institute Pertanian Bogor, Chairman of the Indonesian Agribusiness Association, Profesor Dr. Insinyur Bayu Krishnamurti, Magister Sains.
Allow me to read the short curriculum vitae of Professor Dr. Insinyur Bayu Krishnamurti, Magister Sains. Bayu Krishnamurti is a professor of agribusiness policy from Bogor Agricultural University or Institute Pertanian Bogor, with extensive experience as an academic, high-ranking government official, business entity leader, and activist of non-governmental organization in Indonesia. Professor Bayu, now we invite you to deliver your keynote speech. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, distinguished speakers, professors, lecturers, students, and all of the participants on this very important conference. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera. Always an honor and a pleasure to be invited by University of Tidar to come to the Kota Magelang, because this area, this region, is actually have a significant meanings for Indonesia and especially for, of course, for the government of Indonesia. As you know, there is an army school here, an army academy here in Magelang, and in the next few days, Professor Law, there will be a very special event in this city, which is the President of Indonesia are asking all of the cabinet members to come to this city, to the what they call it as Lembah Tidar or Tidar Valley, and it's kind of a team building event for the cabinet, because the cabinet is I think is one of the biggest now in Indonesian history, more than 100 cabinet members. So they need to build the cohesiveness and the team spirit of the cabinet. So thank you very much, Pak Joko, Professor Joko, to inviting me again to come to Universitas Tidar and to the Tidar Valley. Because before I deliver my speech, first I would like to address and to probably communicate with all the students. The organizer, could you put the first slide, the conference slide with all the speakers? I would like to see the title of the conference. Could you, please? No, not this one. Not my slide. The previous slide. The previous flyer. The conference. The title of the conference. This is the Conference of Agriculture, Nutraceutical, and Food Science, isn't it? Right? Really? Oh no. Pindah ke file yang lain, pindah ke file sebelumnya. Tolong pindah ke file sebelumnya. Jangan file saya, file sebelumnya. Jangan saya. Yang tadi, yang tampilan pertama tadi loh. Mana panitianya? Bukan ini. Tampilan pertamanya tadi. Keluar dulu dari file saya. Yang tadi ada judul seminarnya, ada judul conference-nya tadi. Nah, ini. Okay? So, the title of the conference is Agriculture, Nutraceutical, and Food Science. I would like to give a quiz to the student. Dan quiz ini, pakai bahasa Indonesia aja ya, biar cepet. Harus dijawab dalam bahasa Inggris. Harus dijawab dalam bahasa Inggris. Ya. Hadiahnya, saya menyediakan 3 hadiah. Satu orang hadiahnya 1 juta rupiah. Oke? Tapi hanya buat student, dosennya nggak boleh. Oke? Nah, cepet-cepetan aja, cepet-cepetan. Ada 2 pertanyaan, pertanyaan A, pertanyaan B, ya, atau pertanyaan 1, pertanyaan 2. Pertanyaan 2 hanya akan saya berikan kalau pertanyaan 1-nya benar. Oke? Pertanyaan saya adalah, tolong jelaskan dalam bahasa Inggris, apa yang dimaksud dengan agricultural nutraceutical? Ya. Para mahasiswa, Anda datang ke sini, kayaknya setengah dipaksa sama dosennya. Absennya ada di sini, kalau nggak dapat absennya. Nggak tahu konferensi apa itu. Pertanyaan saya, bisa? Yes, silakan Mas. Apa yang dimaksud dengan agriculture nutraceutical? Silakan, dalam bahasa Inggris, please. Ayo Mas. Ya Anda. Mengoai lah. Ini panitia nggak ada mic-nya ya? Mbok lari Mas. Mas MC. Mas MC. Halo. Mbok lari ke sini gitu loh. Lah, MC-nya males. Silakan. Biar kedengeran, rupanya nggak kedengeran. In your opinion, what is agriculture nutraceutical?
Check. Okay, thank you, sir. Before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Taufal Wahyu Diaudin. I'm from Agrotechnology Program Study, Faculty of Agriculture. Going to the question of your question, in my opinion, I'm sorry, the pamphlet is gone.
Agro-nutraceutical, that they put there.
Okay. In my opinion, about agricultural nutraceutical and food science, it's talk about majority about agricultural food science, and it's about research and development. Therefore, like Prof. Cahyo said before, we are still have any innovation about food and many nutraceutical that most important to our activity or our life. Most importantly, there is also health issue.
Okay.
That it must be improved.
Oke. Udah Mas, cukup.
Oke.
Belajar menjawab dengan pendek, jangan panjang-panjang. Oke, baik. Jawabannya salah. Ada yang bisa? Ya Mas. Di Google dong, gimana sih? Nggak mau 1 juta? Kan tinggal Google aja. Silakan.
Excuse me, thanks for the chance, Prof. Bayu, and thanks for all ladies and gentlemen. Let me introduce myself. I'm Bramada Alif from the Agrotechnology Department of Universitas Tidar.
Okay.
So, in my opinion, I will talk about 2 definition of 2 words. It's so agricultural is all about the agricultural sectors for its agriculture, animal science, or maybe fisheries.
Okay.
And nutraceutical is all the product that contain nutrient. So it's used for the food, for the health, also many use also. Agricultural nutraceutical is all the product of agriculture that contain the use for food,
Okay.
for health, for medicine, or many use others.
Oke.
Thanks.
Jawabannya masih salah. Ada lagi yang mau nyoba? Nggak ada? Ini di sini terus cowok semua, ceweknya mana? Silakan Mas. Anda jadi panitia atau mau menjawab? Oh panitia, tak kira mau jawab. Silakan, nggak ada? Oke, kalau gitu pertanyaan saya rubah. Pertanyaan keduanya saya kasih. Apa agriculture nutraceutical yang sangat terkenal di masyarakat Jawa? Apa agriculture nutraceutical yang sangat terkenal dan dipakai sehari-hari terutama di masyarakat Jawa? Dosennya nggak boleh ngomong. Masih saya Mas? Ya, kamu rapi sekali, saya agak curiga kamu dosen.
Okay. I'm Pancara Hadimulya, I'm from Universitas Gajah Mada, Faculty of Agriculture.
Pantesan dari Jogja.
Okay, the main example for the agriculture and nutraceutical in society in Indonesia is we called wedang uwu, and then we call it jamu, and maybe some of jamu product sinom like that.
Oke, thank you very much, jawabannya benar. Saya nyediain 3, yang dapat cuma 1, ya sudahlah, nasibnya. Jadi, nutraceutical actually talking about the benefit. The benefit of the ingredients within the agriculture product. It's not the agriculture product ansih, it's the benefit. So, maybe in the daily basis we can call it agriculture nutraceutical as a supplement. Ya, supplement. It's not food, it's not drink, it's not beverage, but something that make us more healthy, more fresh, and so forth. And in Indonesian culture, it's very, very famous, and also it's have a long history within our culture, which is jamu. Jamu is actually the agriculture nutraceutical. So I think this title is very interesting, agriculture nutraceutical and food. So the organizing committee difference those two. Yes, because in food, it's not always talking about the benefit, but food in such. Within food, we will have the benefit. Okay, my papers, my presentation will talk more on, next please, tolong ke slide saya sekarang. More on the subtitle actually, which is the local agriculture development to achieve SDGs. Yeah? Next. So SDGs, hopefully all the students of Universitas Tidar or Tidar University already recognize this. This is a very famous goals that been adopted by 195 countries in the world. It's been signed by 2015 in UN in New York, and it becoming the guidance almost all of the development program in many countries. You can see there is 17 goals, and the number 1 goal is no poverty. So the beauty and that make SDGs so famous and becoming, something that been adopted in so many countries, because whatever countries in Europe, in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia, all of the countries, all of them agree that these 17 goals is their goals. Number 1 is no poverty. I think no countries in the world would deny the goals of no poverty. Everyone would like to see no poverty in their countries. The second is zero hunger. No hunger, basically. Yeah? And so on and so forth until the number 17, the partnership for the goals, number 17. I will not discuss all of the goals because I think this is need 3 SKS untuk menjelaskannya. Ya. Kalau saya memberi kuliah di IPB, saya memberi kuliahnya 3 SKS untuk SDGs saja. Baik, next. Now, this is the challenge. Even though 195 countries already adopted SDGs, but unfortunately, you can see that the speedometer, like in your motorcycle or in your cars, you can see that only 15% that on track. So the goals have to be achieved in 2030. That is the target. So it's not something that happened in overnight. It's something that will happen gradually through time. But unfortunately, again, only 15% are on track. About 48% moderately or severely off track. And 37% is stagnation or regression. So it's not a progress, it's becoming going backward, even worse of the situation. Yeah? And that is the goals from 1 to 17, and you can see out of the 17 goals, there is a 169 target and 232 indicators. Again, I think this is something that we need, all of us, especially the students, need to put your mind and think about it, that only 15% of our effort to reduce poverty, to make sure no hunger, is on track. Yeah? Next. This is another presentation on that. You can see this is on the Asia Pacific, the report by UNESCAP 2024. The orange line is actually the target for 2023, and the blue, gray are the achievement, the progress. You can see this is still far behind. Not mentioning compared to the target of 2030. Even for the target of 2023, we are still lag behind. And that is not only because of COVID. Yes, COVID, of course, gave an impact. COVID have a contribution for the regressions of the achievement, but this is not only because of COVID. Yeah? And one particular goals, and I think is very important, which is the climate actions, is actually going backward. The red point there is even regression. So we have a very big and important and strategic task to put our mind and our effort to make sure SDGs can be achieved. Yeah? Next, please. Sorry about the text, but sorry. Could you go back one slide, please? Before this. Maju, mundur lagi satu. Nah ini. SDGs will not be achieved with business as usual. All the think tank and the research institution all over the world already come to these conclusions. We cannot achieve SDGs if we doing our business the way we do for the last 50 or 20 or 50 or 40 years. We need to change. We need to develop ourselves and becoming better. Yeah? Next. So, sorry. Sebelumnya, tadi yang belum dibahas. Sebelumnya boleh? Nah, ini. And I think this is also very interesting to see because we have our friends from Malaysia, a comparison between countries in ASEAN. Indonesia and Malaysia is not so much difference. We are like behind compared to Singapore and Vietnam and Thailand in terms of our index. But having saying that, our score, Indonesia, is actually progressing. We make the progress, but still far away from our own target. Yeah? So this is not bad in such that we could blame anyone, no. We already make that progress. But we need to do better. Yeah? So, next. Nah ini. I think we need to come together and bring back the promise that in 2030 we could achieve these global goals. That's why the 2020 to 2030 is, the UN call it as a decade of actions. And this decade of actions at least consists three components, very important. First, mobilize everyone, everywhere. So, students of Universitas Tidar, please do whatever you can. There is a very famous quote from one of the, I forgot the name, one of the president in the United States. He said, you have to do whatever you can, whenever, with whatever you have. Kamu harus melakukan perbuatan baik itu kapan saja dan dengan apa saja yang Anda punya. So, I would like to invite and urge the student of Universitas Tidar to do whatever you can to support those 17 goals. Second is demand urgency and ambitions. Kalau besok ada yang mau demo, jangan ya, tapi kalau mau ada, pasangin, bentangin gitu, posternya. Bahwa Presiden mohon segera capai SDGs gitu. Enggak, harapan rakyat. Kan, tadi saya sudah katakan, is there anyone here who doesn't agree with zero poverty, zero hunger, good education, emancipation for women and children, and so forth? I think all of those goals is our goals. And the third, of course, design new innovation and solution. So our conference, on top of appealing and asking all the students to come with the number one, our discussion hopefully could contribute to number three. Design new innovation and solutions, especially on the agriculture, nutraceutical, and food. Yeah? Next. So, now I come to the topic of this conference, which is the local agriculture development. You need to come with a definition first about what do you mean by local agriculture development. And I will use this as my definition. First, local agriculture development means backyard farming or family farming or smallholder farming's empowerment. We need to empower they who do farming, even it's a backyard farming. Tahu kan backyard farming artinya pertanian yang ada di belakang rumah. Family farming itu adalah farming yang dari generasi ke generasi. And of course smallholder farming, which is, I think that's the dominant, particularly here in Central Java, we need to empower them. But at the same time, we need also to have rural and living space development. So dusun by dusun, desa by desa, we need to put that in the context of local agriculture development. One thing that is not, hal yang bukan, hal yang tidak, with this concept is big companies agriculture. We are not talking about that, right? So we talk about small farmers. Big companies, plantations, all of that, they have their own role. But in this particular conference, we have to talk about this because this is very important. Next, please. Family farmers, I just use the family farmers because the data is only have for family farmers, is feeding the world and caring for the earth. 90% of farm are run by individual or family. 90%. Yeah. 70 to 80% family farm occupy around farmland. Or the farmland in the whole world is occupied by family farm in the context of 70 to 80%. Family farm produce about 80% of the world food. And due to the variety of food, family farm strongly contribute to food security. So, our Honorable Vice Rector in his opening speech talking about food security, in Indonesia, at least, we cannot achieve food security without the role of this local agriculture. And having said that, there is a rural economic contribution. This is Pak Joko professorship, actually. 40% of GDP from the non-OECD countries come from rural area. 60% of poverty is still in rural area. 55% of employment creation is come from rural area. 47% saving are come from rural area. There is a story in BRI, ya, kalau saya pakai bahasa Indonesia deh, di BRI jumlah simpanan masyarakat desa ya, itu besarnya 2 kali lebih besar daripada kredit yang disalurkan oleh BRI ke desa. Tabungan dan simpanannya masyarakat desa di BRI besarnya 2 kali lipat dibandingkan kredit BRI ke desa. Artinya apa? Uang dari desa pergi ke kota. Jadi rural area, rural economy is the source of investment. And last but not least, 68% of carbon absorption is come from rural area. So the city make the pollutions, the rural area save us with the absorption. Right? So this is the importance of local agriculture in the context of rural economy. Next, please. For local agriculture development, I just put 10 components that I think very, very important for local agriculture development and their contribution to at least 6 of the 17 of the SDGs. First, produce and consume locally. If you produce and consume locally, so the carbon footprints will be shortened. Yeah? If you buy your vegetables from the market, you have to drive there with your motorcycle, buy it, and drive back again to your house. But if just, you buy 2,000 rupiah, 5,000 rupiah of cabe or of kangkung, and it grow in your backyard, then you don't have to go, and there is no pollution with your motorcycle. Ya kan Pak, kan cuma satu motor ini. You imagine if the whole household in Magelang did that, it's becoming a huge number. But if we could produce and consume locally, at least for some, ya saya tahu kita nggak bisa bikin Indomie ya, terpaksa beli kalau mau makan Indomie kan. Tapi masa cabe, cuma mau beli 2.000 perak, harus pergi. Dan kemudian itu menciptakan polusi dan lain-lain. Oke? Yang kedua, reducing cost for food. herbal medicine and jamu. Again, for agriculture nutraceutical. Please, even though your backyard or your whatever, balcony or whatever in your house is very small, you can still plant sirih, for example. Apa sirih bahasa Inggrisnya? Sirih, ya? Atau just tadi cabe. It's in one pot, and you can use for yourself, okay? And it will reduce cost, improving resiliencies, because the fluctuation of price, inflation and everything, if you have that in your house, within your community. I put the picture there is actually a picture of apartment, rumah susun. Myself with another organization now try to promote gardening in rumah susun, in apartment. Yeah? Involvement of family member and local labor. Kalau kita bekerja hanya dengan uang, maka biasanya hanya kepala keluarga, suaminya. Tapi kalau ini, istrinya ikut, anaknya ikut, belajar megang tanah, megang cacing, itu sehat. Okay? Transport locally. I think within the Magelang area, I think you can find almost everything. I don't want to use the word of swasembada. That's totally different concept. But at least if we make it smaller, the transportation cost, then it helps. Closed loop. Why? We can use it for processing the waste. You can use it and reduce the waste because of it produced and consumed locally. It's very easy to becoming organic and becoming a green living. There is study, very strong evidence that if you wake up and you see greeneries, it helps and support your health. And it's generation to generations. We now very concerned about the reducing the number of farmers. Because no farmers, no food, no futures. We need to have farmers. And the skill and the knowledge becoming farmers is actually it's not something easy to obtain. We need to put it and have a generation, 2 generations process of education. And of course, keep the culture alive. I don't know, the students here in Tidar University, do you still recognize the legend of Dewi Sri, for example, and how the Dewi Sri is crying when we are not, when our rice in our plate, when we eat, has come to leftover. And that is a culture. We see, our friends dancing just now. But that doesn't mean anything if we lose our cultures. Even jamu is also a culture. So, local agricultural development supporting all of this, and with that, we also contribute to at least first zero hunger, not all, but we contribute to that. Good health and well-being because of jamu and the greeneries. A quality education. Education is not only through school, but through knowledge, of practical knowledge in agriculture and something to survive. Gender equity, because again, the women, the children, all have a participation on that. Sustainable cities and communities. You will love to see gang-gang, lorong-lorong, jalan-jalan kecil yang hijau dengan sayur-sayur. Dan it's a responsible consumptions and productions. So local agriculture development have a huge impact on the SDGs. Next, please. So how develop local agriculture development? First, let's appreciate them. So Pak Joko, please, within the Faculty of Agriculture, do not always teach our students, or I'm sure in your faculty in Tidar University, you are not only teaching about big companies, managements, accounting, and all of that, and put it on agribusiness. I'm a professor of agribusiness. I teach that. But we need to make a balance and give an appreciation to local agriculture's activities. The second now, and this is very important, and I'm excited that we have a distinguished speaker on these topics. Local and small, but it can be, it must be high-tech and smart. Local and small doesn't mean it becoming traditional and old. We can make it smart, using high-tech. Precision agriculture, smart irrigation, high productivity seed, integrated farming, and so forth. And we have to have a local event and market. Bikinlah mahasiswa, kalau perlu di depan itu tadi saya lihat pamerannya Pak Joko, kalau boleh kritik sedikit gitu ya. Mbok dibikin yang dijual itu produknya petani-petani kecil. Sekali seminggu di halaman depan bikinnya farmers market. Ya mereka nggak bisa bayar, nggak ada sponsornya. Tapi kalau kita bisa buat itu, ada yang bawa jamur, ada yang bawa melon, ada yang bawa sayur, terus hari Minggu kita datang belanja, wah itu akan menjadi sesuatu banget buat mereka. Beri award, beri apresiasi, kasih penghargaan untuk mereka. Ya kalau Pak Joko besok sudah pindah ke Solo lagi, ya bikin di Solo Pak. Terus kemudian group and community empowerment. Within the local agriculture, we need to go with the community empowerment, not individually, but group. For rural development, rural transportation and mobility is a critical. Basic infrastructure with safe and clean water, electricity, sanitation, landscape, internet. Itu sekarang internet itu sudah menjadi kebutuhan pokok. Saya ada cerita, petani nggak bisa bahasa Indonesia, bisanya dia bahasa Aceh. Bahasa Aceh, dari Takengon. Ya. Tapi dia adalah petani kopi, lokal, organik, karena dia nggak bisa beli, dan organiknya tidak sengaja. Karena dia tidak bisa beli pupuk. Jadi akhirnya malah jadi organik. Dia ketik, dia drop out, jadi mahasiswa nggak punya biaya, pulang kampung, bisa punya laptop jadul banget. Dia ketik di situ dalam bahasa Aceh. Maksud saya nggak bisa bahasa Indonesia itu bahasa Indonesianya Aceh banget gitu. Dia ketik dalam bahasa Aceh, kemudian dia pakai Google Translate, langsung ke bahasa Inggris. Anda bisa pakai bahasa Jawa langsung ke bahasa Inggris. Entah bagaimana dia dapat satu kontak di Jepang. Beremail-emailan lah dia, si anak ini, dengan Jepang itu. Dalam bahasa yang dia sendiri, bahasa Indonesia aja nggak bisa, apalagi bahasa Inggris. Dia juga nggak tahu itu emailnya benar apa enggak. Yang penting Google Translate-nya bilang begitu, ya udah dia kirim aja. Si orang Jepangnya juga maklum aja. Oh ya udah deh, ini bukan it's not native language yang apa gitu. Akhirnya terjadi komunikasi, mulai si anak muda ini ngirim 5 kilo kopi. Oh kok enak, pesan lagi 10 kilo, 20 kilo, 30 kilo. Sekarang dia setiap bulan sudah mengirim ke Jepang, itu antara 400 sampai 500 kilogram kopi Takengon. Karena ada internet itu. Kemudian, rural education and training. Saya kok terinspirasi, saya bukan karena pro Pak Anies ya, tapi ruang guru itu menurut saya bagus banget. Sekali-sekali merdeka belajarnya mahasiswa jangan hanya pergi magang ke perusahaan. Jadi KKN-nya 4 bulan gitu, ngajar. Ya kan? Gitu. Hidup bersama masyarakat. Kemudian community empowerment, institution and facilities. Dan kedua sisi ini jadi satu. Itulah local agriculture development. Next, saya udah dikasih tanda, waktunya habis. Next. Tadi saya katakan, sorry, jadi bahasa Indonesia. I said that even the small and local, it has to be. It's not only can be, but it has to be high tech and smart. So this is just, if you browse in your Google, you will see the emerging tech for 2024. I just put the red circle. All of them is biotech. 3 of them at least is biotechnology. And university have the responsibility to translate this, advanced technology and put it in the context of local agriculture. Next. That in total, this is the agri-tech, 10 agri-tech trend in innovations, agri-biotech, regenerative agriculture, and it's come from 5,290 startups. It's becoming business. So, you students, please listen to Professor Law, listen to the speakers, get the inspirations, and make it business. With that, you can help the local farmers. Next, last slide. So, let us bring back the promise of reducing hunger, reducing poverty, bring back promise of SDGs achievement through the local agriculture development. We have to build forward better, not doing business as usual. And we have to make sure no one left behind. The progress, the economic growth, the wealth is not only for the big one, but also for the small one. And last but not least, this is the challenge, have to be a micro local action, but we need to think to have a macro national impact, and it can be put on the data nationally. And that's the way we do local development to have a recognition nationwide. I thank you for your attention, and for the students from UGM who got the 1 million from me, I will go through Pak Joko, the organizing committee. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Bayu Krishnamurti, for the enlightening presentation, and sorry for the inconvenience.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to continue our session with the plenary speakers. Here we have the first plenary speaker exploring the carbohydrate metabolism related genes in giant gurami fish, Dr. Dian Novitasari, Sarjana Perikanan, Magister Science from Universitas Hasanuddin. The second plenary speaker, utilization of agriculture product as a feed ingredient in poultry, Professor Dr. Loh Tek Chuan from University Putra, Malaysia. And the third plenary speaker, carbon deposition by natural ecosystem, agriculture crops, Professor Elena Volkova from Tula State University, Russia. The presentation will be followed by the discussion plenary, and the session will be moderated by Ms. Alifa Rahma Faradiani, Master of Science. Before beginning the session, allow me to read the curriculum vitae of the moderator. Mrs. Alifa, she is a lecturer and researcher in the Food Technology, Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Tidar. She obtained her bachelor degree and master degree from Universitas Gadjah Mada. Mrs. Alifa, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for the MC, for the time. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. My name is Alifa Rahma Faradiani, and I am honored to be serving as your moderator for today's event. So, the theme of our conference, Empowering the Local Agricultural Resource Management to Achieve Sustainable Development Goals 2030, highlights the significance of leveraging local resources for sustainable development and food security. With agriculture playing a vital role in our shared future, we are excited to engage in meaningful discussion today. Without further delay, let us officially begin our conference. First, allow me to introduce our three distinguished speakers for this session. Please welcome Dr. Dian Novitasari, Sarjana Perikanan Magister Science, Professor Dr. Loh Teck Shun, and attending from across the globe from Zoom meeting, Professor Elena Volkova.
Will be about carbon deposition by natural ecosystem.
Okay, we will now begin our presentation session. And for your information, the discussion panel and Q&A sessions will be held after the presentation. So any questions from the participants or guests to the speakers will be answered later on. And we will welcome our first speaker. So it is Professor Elena Volkova from Tula State University, Russia. But first, allow me to read the curriculum vitae of our speaker first. Professor Elena Volkova from Tula State University is the head of biology department and head of scientific and research grants in Tula State University. She has extensive experience in working in the ecological field as shown through her research interests, which are the diversity and ecology of plant communities of different types of natural ecosystems. Our speaker has published more than 250 publications and recently underwent an internship in ITMO University in St. Petersburg. Professor Elena Volkova, the time is yours.
Colleagues, I'm really happy to be part of this conference. And today I would like to speak about carbon deposition by natural ecosystems. Please, next slide. As you know, modern climatic change has big problems today because global temperature is increasing for the last years in different parts of the world. Next slide. The reason of this increasing temperature is the high concentration of greenhouse gases. Please, next slide. Thank you. They retain the heat to the atmosphere, and by this reason we have a high temperature in the Earth's surface. Next slide, please. Carbon greenhouse gases, it's many gases, for example, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and some others. On the next slide, you can see that on the next slide, please. Next slide, please. You can see the carbon cycle, and of course, greenhouse gases add some more concentration, and this carbon cycle became work not in normal processes, became work wrong, and it makes some problem in climate. Next slide, please. On this slide, you can see that in the last century, the carbon dioxide concentration is grow fast, and it means that the reason of this high growing is human impact. Next slide, please. On this slide, you can see that methane emission is also growing in the different part of the world, and it also the reason for climate change. Next slide. On this slide, you can see that not only carbon dioxide, methane, but also nitrous oxide is also growing for the last years. Next slide, please. It makes many extreme situations in the world. For example, in the coastal countries, for the last 10 years, we have a much higher frequency of some storms, heavy rains, floods, and hurricanes. And the question, how it correlates with carbon change, with climate change. And if you look on this picture, you can see that correlation between growing temperature and decreasing of ice area, especially in Arctic zone, and growing level of world ocean and precipitation. And it makes some problems in coastal area, at least, for example. Next slide, please. In general, you can see that in different parts of the world, the greenhouse gases emissions are growing with different rates, in different parts. Next slide. As I said, that it makes some problems, and if in coastal countries hurricanes became faster, in other part of the world we can see most faster the droughts and the dry. Next slide, please. And dry areas and deserts became bigger. You can see that by some models, especially if annual temperature will grow for the 4 degrees Celsius, we will have much bigger areas of drylands. So it means that climate change make a lot of problems and different problems, from growing of drylands to hurricanes in other part of the world. Next slide, please. The largest emitters of greenhouse gases is different country. At first place is United States, European countries, China, Russia, and Southeast Asia. Next slide. The sources of greenhouse gases is also different. Electricity production and industry, transportation, and of course agriculture. Agriculture produce from 25 till 37% of total greenhouse gases emissions. Next slide, please. The most part, it's from crop production, land using, and livestock. General analysis of all sources of greenhouse emissions in agriculture allowed us to select 4 big problems. Next slide. Carbon dioxide emissions associated with deforestation for agricultural fields. Methane emissions from rice fields. Methane emissions from agriculture, from animals husbandry. And nitrous oxide emissions during using the fertilizers. Let's speak about each position. Next slide. Deforestation and carbon dioxide emissions. Everybody knows that forests are important carbon sinks. In forests, store more than 800 gigatons of carbon. Next slide. Carbon stored in biomass of trees, dead woods, litters, and organic matters in the soil. But unfortunately, forests also a good object to fillings for agricultural needs. Next slide. And here we can see the areas of deforestation in the world. And it's growing and growing year by year. As a result, the crop area increasing, but forest area decreases. Next slide. You can see on this picture changing of forest and crops areas. Next slide. This situation provides the growing of our carbon dioxide concentration as a result of wood decomposition and decomposition of organic matter in the soil into the carbon dioxide in atmosphere. It means that anthropogenic impact play important role to increase of carbon dioxide in atmosphere. Next slide. On this slide, next please. On this slide, you can see the correlation between annual deforestation and carbon dioxide emissions in different years on this slide and on the next slide, please. It's typical for Brazilian Amazon forest. We can see how deforestation correlates with carbon dioxide emissions from this area. Next slide. Also, the fires, slash and burns enhance this effect. And finally, the forest became a source of carbon dioxide into atmosphere, but not a sink. Next slide. If carbon concentration is growing, maybe it's good for intensity of photosynthesis of the plants. It's such opinion have some scientists. But answer for these questions is not so clear. Next slide, please. If we discuss carbon-free plants with normal type of photosynthesis, the experiments show increasing the rate of photosynthesis at the first stage of experiments. But then intensity of photosynthesis reached the plateau and at the concentration about 800, 1000 ppm. But carbon-4 plants had slack way of photosynthesis, which are usually growing in hot and dry conditions. They do not have any increasing of intensity of photosynthesis with changing of carbon dioxide. It means that increasing concentration of these gases doesn't play good role in increasing of productivity of food crops. Next slide. So it means the forest is the real stock of carbon, and we have to conserve this ecosystem because they store huge amount of carbon in different position of the forest. As I said before, in biomass, dead woods, and organic matter in the soil. But if we have so huge deforested areas, how to reduce carbon dioxide emission? Next slide. Answer is one. We have to planting trees or do reforestation. Maybe we have to use trees with high sequestration potential. It makes carbon stock in forest much more. Next slide, and we are going to the second problem, rice fields. It's a big problem because from the rice fields, emission of carbon, emission of greenhouse gases, especially methane, are huge. Next slide. Rice fields is widespread in different countries, but about 90% of rice production occurs in Asian countries. Next slide. But rice production is accompanied by emission of methane by methanogenic bacteria. They live in aerobic wet soil, and by this reason, rice fields produce much more greenhouse gases comparing with other crops. Next slide. So, methane is released from flooding rice fields. About 30% of agricultural methane emissions produced by rice cultivation. Next slide. Methane emissions from the light fields can be reduced by improving water management. By some analysis, in some experiments, scientists show that methane emissions will be much lower if we will use some dry periods in rice cultivation. Next slide. Third problem is animal husbandry. In agriculture, the animals gives about 15–18% of anthropogenic greenhouse emissions. Next slide. Cattle are one of the main sources of methane emissions. Next slide. Methane is formed in digestive tracts of animals as a result of microbiological fermentation. So, livestock farming is an important anthropogenic factor of increasing methane emissions. Next slide. Do we have to reduce cattle population in the world? Of course, we are not ready for some action. But what we have to do to decrease, to reduce methane emissions? At first, it's changing of diet of animals. It correlates with using more grain in the food of animals. Other position is introduction of methanotrophic bacteria into the ramen of animals. And of course, it's genetic selection of animals. So methane emissions from manure can be reduced by utilization technology. It's also one of the ways to reduce methane emission by livestock farming. Next slide, please. Fourth problem, nitrous oxide emission. Natural sources are denitrifying bacteria and fungi. Growing nitrous oxide in atmosphere, what we can see on these pictures, means anthropogenic origin of these gases. About 40% of nitrous oxygen emission are anthropogenic. The main sources are fertilizers on agricultural fields and livestock manure. Next slide. Here we can see the correlation between emission of this gas and raising of using fertilizers for the last years. Next slide. So, using fertilizer, as you can see on this slide, add more nitrous oxide emissions from the soil. Next slide. So, agriculture contributes to greenhouse gas emissions through intensive land using, rice production, and livestock raising. Next slide. At the same time, agriculture itself suffers from the effect of climate change. The increasing of average temperature by the 5 degrees Celsius will lead to decrease the agricultural production in different regions of the world. Next slide. And rice productivity also increasing during the last years. At the first reason, because rice fields destroyed by the floods, especially in coastal countries. And next slide. The second reason, because the high temperature, more than 35 degrees Celsius, is bad for flowering, and rice cannot produce the grains. Finally, we will use decreasing of rice production. Next slide. The loss of agricultural productivity will lead to grow food prices, which will increase food problems in the world, especially in poor countries. It means that climate change may be like a reason for hunger. It means that next slide, we have to need to develop climate smart food system. There are various strategies for reducing greenhouse gas emission. On this slide, you can see different positions for this. Agroforestry, using different technology, land use conservation, and other things. Next slide. For understanding the effect of any strategies, we have to organize the monitoring of natural ecosystems and experimental lands. On this slide, you can see a world network of greenhouse gas monitoring station. And we can see on this slide a lot of stations in the United States, Europe, and Asian Southeast countries. But in Russia, not too much such station for monitoring. For compensation this problem, in 2021 in Russia, we have pilot project to create the net of carbon polygons. Next slide. And today we have almost 20 regions subject of Russian Federation, which have such carbon polygon for monitoring greenhouse gases. Next slide. This polygon allowed us to estimate carbon balance and in general greenhouse gases balance for natural ecosystems, and it's allowed us to answer for these questions: what kind of ecosystems has the biggest sequestration potential? Next slide. As a result of such monitoring, we can select the ecosystem with highest sequestration potential, which will work against greenhouse gas effect. Next slide. Also, we develop different technologies to reduce emission and increase the absorption of greenhouse gases, like reforestation, cultivation of high productivity plantations, restoration of disturbing plains, restoration of wetlands, and eco-friendly farming. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, please give a round of applause for Professor Elena for such an informative presentation. Now I will return this event briefly to the MC. The time is yours.
Before continue the conference, we would like to ask Professor Bayu to come forward as we like to present the appreciation certificate and plaque to you. And to present the certificate and plaque, we kindly invite the Dean of Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Tidar, Professor Joko Sutrisno, if you may come forward. Thank you, Professor Joko Sutrisno and Professor Bayu. We'll back to moderator. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, MC. Next, we will have a presentation from Dr. Dian Novitasari, Sarjana Perikanan, Magister Sains. Allow me to read the curriculum vitae of Dr. Dian first. Dr. Dian Novitasari, Sarjana Perikanan, Magister Sains, is a renowned researcher specializing in aquaculture. Our speaker obtained her PhD from IPB University in 2022, and since then has contributed to the field as a lecturer in Faculty of Vocational, Hasanuddin University. She is a reviewer for several journals such as Genetics of Aquatic Organisms, Jurnal Samudra Aquatica, and Belida Indonesia. And she is also the author of more than 10 books and scientific papers. Dr. Dian, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Bismillah, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to say thanks to the committee and the Dean of Agriculture Faculty, that's right, for inviting me to be here today. So maybe without further ado, just let's start the presentation. Okay, today I will start about our study in exploring the carbohydrate metabolism related genes in giant gourami, Ospronemus gourami. And the next slide, please. Okay, the reason why we conduct this study, because today, as presented by the prior speaker, the protein sources has been limited in supply and also its price keep increasing. So carbohydrate as one of the macronutrient in the feed, and we know that as non-protein energy sources with abundant raw materials and also sources, and its price relatively cheap if we compare the protein sources. So we should optimize this utilization, carbohydrate as energy sources in feed, and that we do that to reduce the feed cost, of course, and then to reduce the water waste, and also to optimize the energy sources by using the protein sparing effect mechanism in fish. And today, many manufacturer feed that develop feed that mainly use plant-based ingredients that contain very high carbohydrate, and we need to optimize that fish with high efficiency. So we need to develop more fish that can utilize high very well, and so we can increase the production cost efficiency. And for that, we need the biological information, especially the physiological and molecular response after several carbohydrate treatment, so we can select the superior fish. And the next slide, please. And why we use giant gourami in our study? Okay, the first, because this fish is one of the native species in Southeast Asia, especially in Indonesia. So many people like this fish. And also, if we compare it with the other freshwater, its selling price relatively higher with compare the other freshwater fish. And then, giant gourami is one of the omnivorous fish. So these fish have a high ability in carbohydrate utilization. Even in the real practices in the farmer, many farmers use natural feed that just fresh giant taro leaves. Kalau di Jawa Barat kenalnya daun sente. That natural feed that just directly given into the giant gourami without process prior to the administration. And the last but not least, the comprehensive information about the molecular identification in giant gouramis has not been evaluated. Because of that, we use giant gourami in our study. The next slide. Okay, actually in 2016, Irmawati et al. Has been successfully identified the partial genes that related to insulin-like growth factor 1. Just for information, this gene play roles in metabolism, of course, and then also play in osmoregulation and growth. Because they successfully identified the partial sequences and found the giant gourami gene in the IGF-1 has the highest similarity with Epinephelus choides and lanceolatis with percent identity more than 90%. They also successfully designed several real-time PCR that will be used in the next study, but IGF-1 is not play roles in the main carbohydrate metabolism. So we need to explore more genes that representative how the carbohydrate metabolism that's going in the fish body. Next slide. And then we try to more explorating carbohydrate metabolism. First, we try to identify the glucokinase genes, the fourth variant of hexokinase. And hexokinase is also the first limiting factor in carbohydrate metabolism, that is in glycolysis pathway. And these genes, or these variants, is therefore variants with have unique action, because only these genes that actively working when the high blood plasma glucose in fish were significantly elevated. And this activity is activated not inhibited by the other molecule that produced by the glycolysis pathway. So glucokinase, we can use that the glucose sensor after high carbohydrate feeding. And in our study, alhamdulillah, we can sequence it, all the sequence, the full sequence of glucokinase. We got more than 2,000 nucleotides. And after blasting with the NCBA, we got that our sequences in giant gourami have the highest similarity with Anabas testudineus, both in nucleotide and amino acid with more than 90% identity. We also create the phylogenetic tree and find the closest relative with beta splendens. And all the sequences has been submitted in CBA, so you can see in the website. And also from this study, we successfully to design the real-time PCR, and that will be used in the next study. However, if we explore the genes in order, not only in the carbohydrate, but also in the other pathway, if you use the Sanger sequencing, that's the long method, the old method, it's really time consuming. We need many time optimization, and also re-PCR, so that make it pricey. And because of that, next slide please, we try deep dive using the next generation sequencing, NGS, using transcriptomic tools, and we use Illumina platform. And for information, before we collect the sample, we treat the fish with two different carbohydrate levels, that is high carbohydrate 50% and low carbohydrate 30%. This value were we used according to the Mokoginta et al. In 24. We collect the sample at the end of the trial at the 16, especially in the 6 hours after feeding. We collect the liver tissue from 5 fish from each group. We pull it and then we sequence it. We extract the mRNA and then we sequence using the Illumina, and we get more than 87 million nucleotides, both in high glucose and also low glucose treatment. And among the more than 87 millions, when the further analysis that we got transcript after blasting with 7 databases, there is more than 409,000 transcript then belongs to the 33,000 genes. But for carbohydrate metabolism, we only got more than 400 genes that we successfully identified. And all the genes, the 33 genes, then we compare that with NCBA database. We know that giant gourami also have the high similarity with Anabas testudineus, but also with the other marine fishes like Lates calca river. And also our data has been submitted into the biosample NCBA. Next slide, please. Okay, then with further analysis, we know that there is more than 2,700 genes that differentially expressed in both groups. But I'm sorry that not significantly differ, but differentially expressed. The only significantly different in both high carbohydrate and low carbohydrate groups, there were 4,021 genes that significantly downregulate, and there is 43 genes that significantly upregulate in high carbohydrate groups. Next. And then we compare with the database, especially in the Kyoto Encyclopedia of Genes and Genome database. We found that from the all significant different genes that belong to these 3 pathways, immune system and cellular mostly don't regulate. Meanwhile, the metabolism, there is 46 genes that don't regulate, and 43 genes were significantly upregulated. Next. And here there are specific data. The upregulated genes will belong to this pathway. There is five pathways that are related to metabolism that significantly upregulate. And for carbohydrate metabolism, there were 7 genes that significantly upregulate, belongs to glycolysis and gluconeogenesis pathway. Meanwhile, the downregulated genes mostly about the immune system, also cellular mechanism, and the related metabolism is belong to the protein digestion and absorption. Next, please. Okay, we also try to validate the level expression that obtained by the RNA sequencing. We compare that level using real-time PCR. So we use the same sample, also collected in the at the end of the trial using the liver tissue, and we choose 10 genes that related to carbohydrate metabolism, and 4 genes that related to antioxidant system as a representative of immune system. And we found that all the genes that we examined that were in line with the RNA sequencing. So real-time PCR and RNA sequencing have a similar results. Next. And then after we got the sequences and also the genes that significantly respond to a carbohydrate level, and then we want to know how this gene respond to other carbohydrate treatment. So we conducted, next slide, 2 main studies. First about carbohydrate levels. This trial was same with the prior study, that RNA sequencing, but we also collect sample at the day 30. So we analyze all these genes in labs. White indicate no significant differences. Meanwhile, the yellow show the significant increase or upregulation, and green means downregulation. And according to this result, we found that at day 30, after high carbohydrate treatment, there were only glycolysis genes that significantly upregulate. That means carbohydrate metabolism working properly, especially about hexokinase, glucokinase, pyruvate kinase, and lactate dehydrogenase. Meanwhile, the genes that are related to the gluconeogenesis, glycogen phosphorylation, antioxidant, and also energy sensor has been significantly decreased. That means at day 30, chain gurami that fed with high carbohydrate have experienced oxidative stress and also low energy status. Next, please. And at day 16, we also validate the genes, and we found quite differences in the result. The genes that related to glycolysis keep elevated, but the genes that related to the glycogen phosphorylation, glycogenolysis, and also energy sensor has been significantly increased. That means at day 60, the fish keep low energy status and more high stress in antioxidant. So giant gurami could utilize carbohydrate, but also at the day 60, we also can find a decrease in the immune system, especially in antioxidative system. Next, please. And this data was supported by the digestive enzyme activity and also plasma glucose, which significantly differ at day 30, especially in amylase and protease. Meanwhile, the plasma glucose significantly differ at day 60. That means giant gurami that fed with high carbohydrate will have high digestion but low glucose metabolism. If we give or we treat the giant gurami for a long time, that for 60 days. Next. And the second trial about carbohydrate sources, we conducted 2 studies. First, we compared the response of giant gurami if we fed with commercial feed and versus the natural feed. We used giant taro leaves, Alocasia macrorhiza, and then we used 3 carbohydrate sources, that polar meal, abbreviated with PO, rice bran meal, DA, and then palm kernel meal. Next. And in the first study, when we compared the commercial feed and giant taro leaves, we found the expression of glucokinase and also IGF-1 was significantly expressed difference in several tissue. So the tissue distribution, especially in the glucokinase, was significantly different both in the commercial and natural feed, mainly in the liver, intestine, pancreas, and muscle. Meanwhile, for the IGF-1 genes, not really quite different, but its level expression significantly affected by the carbohydrate sources. Next, in this study, we also conduct the glucose tolerance test to know how giant gourami could utilize the very significant high carbohydrate. So we inject the giant gourami using carbohydrate at dose 1 gram per kilogram of body weight intraperitoneally at condition fasting for 48 hours. And we found the giant gourami that fed with high carbohydrate that obtained by the commercial feed will significantly increase the glucokinase and decrease the IGF-1. That means also that carbohydrate sources significantly influence the glucose tolerance test in giant gourami. Next. And here the second study in the carbohydrate sources trial. We use smaller fish, but also higher carbohydrate. We use 3 treatments, that is polar meal, rice bran meal, and palm kernel meal. And we also evaluate several genes that involve in the main carbohydrate metabolism, including start from the insulin signaling until the energy sensor. And we found that at day 30, only the genes that related to glycolysis which significantly differ among the treatment. And at the 60, only the glucokinase genes that significantly differ. And because this result not really representative how the genes changes time by time, so the next slide please. We also take several samples in time series. That is at 0 time, at condition fasting for 24 hours, and then 1, 3, 6, and 8 hours after feeding. And we found that this is a time series data. The letters indicate that there is any differences significant among the time series. Meanwhile, the asterisk indicates significant differences in the between groups. And we found also that insulin signaling and glycolysis in polar meal reached the peak point. So the level expression from the polar meal groups significantly quickly increased compared with the other treatment. So mostly at the first hour, the genes was significantly increased. Meanwhile, from the rice bran and palm kernel meal, it's a bit late. Next slide. And from gluconeogenesis and energy sensor, also showed that giant gourami that fed with polar meal have a faster downregulation in the gluconeogenesis genes and energy sensor. Meanwhile, energy sensor no significant response that we found. And that means that polar meal groups, it quickly metabolize and utilize. Meanwhile, in palm kernel and rice bran meal, the gluconeogenesis and glycolysis has been occurs simultaneously. So we can see the energy sensor at the first and third hour after feeding significantly decrease. That means at that time, there's many energy observed in the cell. Next slide. And here the summary. We can clearly see that giant gourami that fed with polar meal mostly reached the peak point at the first hour. Meanwhile, the rice bran and palm kernel reached the peak point level expression at the first and the third hours after feeding. Next slide, please. And is the supporting data from the blood biochemistry, that is plasma glucose, triglyceride, cholesterol, and total protein, that also show that polar meal had the fastest glucose absorption rate. Next, and this the time interval also showed that polar meal absorbed and utilized quickly if we compare with the rice bran and palm kernel meal. Next, and from our study, this is the conclusion. First of all genes that express in the liver tissue, I underline the liver tissue at the 6 hours after feeding, after different carbohydrate levels were identified. So when maybe you wanted to explore in the other tissue, you have a possibility to explore that. And then the glycolysis gene is the most significantly changed after carbohydrate treatment, both in levels and sources. So if you want to explore the carbohydrate metabolism in fish, you can focus in the glycolysis genes. But also the other pathway we need to explore as the compare data. And the third, high carbohydrate levels can increase the physiological process in the fish, instate the digestion, absorption, and also utilization. But in giant gourami, when fed with high carbohydrate, it will decrease the immune system, especially the antioxidative system. So we need to add supplement to prevent this negative effect. And the last, we recommend polar meal for the carbohydrate sources in giant gourami practices, so we can get more high efficiency in carbohydrate utilization. Next. Okay, thank you very much for the time. That's all for me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dian, for such a comprehensive presentation about carbohydrate metabolism in giant gourami fish. Next, I will present you our last presenter, Professor Dr. Loh Tekshuen. But first, allow me to read the curriculum vitae of Professor Loh. Professor Dr. Loh Tekshuen is a distinguished expert in animal nutrition, which includes feed additives, raw materials, and agro-byproducts, emphasizing least cost feed formulation and balanced diet without compromising the growth performance of animals. He has published at least 163 papers in journals and 6 patents obtained by him and his team members. Our speaker received his PhD in animal production from the Imperial College at University of London, and is now contributing further to the field as a professor and also the Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture, University Putra, Malaysia. Professor Dr. Loh Tekshuen, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so much for the brief introduction, Madam Chair Lady. First of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee, especially inviting me to come over here to share some of the things that I've gone through. I've done it. Okay, and then later on, I would like to thank the Dean for the Faculty of Agriculture. It is really an honor to stand here, especially to share some of the things, especially the research that we carry out in UPM. And some of the work that we have already published them in the journal. That's why probably if you have time, okay, you can try to search from the Google Scholar, and I believe you may access those documents. All right, the task given it to me, which is utilization of agriculture product as a feed ingredient in poultry nutrition. Initially, before I started my exploration on this topic, okay, especially related to ICANF, and then that's why I'm thinking about nutraceutical. And I'm thinking, initially I thought that I can present something like the feed additive that normally produced by ourselves. And we have already commercialized it. For example, like postbiotic. But anyhow, today I'm not going to talk about this one. We try to target on what, for example, like the keynote speaker, Professor Bayu mentioned that food security is very important. That's why I try to target on some of the feed ingredients that we can make use of them, and some of the alternative ingredients that we can make use from the agro waste. Next slide. All right, next slide, please. All right, I believe everybody knowing that poultry product is very important. And then regardless of the meat or eggs, they are essential source for animal protein for human diets. That's why if you look at Malaysian scenario, Malaysian, they normally consume nearly about 46 kilo per capita consumption every year. Next slide. And then if you look at the whole world consumption of poultry products, okay, for example, like in year 2006, okay, they are lower compared with 2016. I believe in year 2023 will be much more higher. I think this is the cheapest animal protein source, especially for human. Next slide. If you look at the poultry production, we have really intensified them in terms of the production, mainly due to First, urbanization. Second, mainly due to our income generation getting higher and higher, or our GDP getting higher and higher, or better. That's the reason why a lot of people there can afford to consume poultry meat. However, we have forgotten about one thing, about their feed. You see, chicken, they are very much dependent on the raw material. I believe the agriculture, just now the speaker mentioned that, carbohydrate source. I think it is very important, okay, to look into it. And I believe the world, okay, especially looking for this kind of ingredient, especially for energy source such as corn. All right, they are the most important ingredient that normally we use, especially for monogastric animals. If you look at the whole cost of feed, they contribute nearly about 60 to 70% of the total cost of the production, especially in poultry production. That's the reason why we need to think about some of the things, some of the sources. And we also need to reconsider, revisit some of the knowledge that we have. For example, like, you see, we learn animal nutrition when we come to the class. However, do you know how to make use of those information or not, knowledge or not? That's why sometimes some of the lecturers, they mention about least cost feed formulation. What does it mean? The formulation of the feed, okay, must be very low cost. This is what we meant as least cost feed formulation. But do not forget, we also need to consider those feed formulation or the feed that we formulated must be a balanced diet. It will not affect the growth performance of the birds. That's the reason why if you refer to some of the commercial birds, especially the commercial broiler, you can find out all those information. They have the starter diet, grower diet, and finisher diet. And then each diet, they have their own nutrient requirement. And this is very important for you to follow because they have been studying it for many years before they disclose it or they share with the farmers. Next slide. If you look at the corn, I believe everybody using it. And then the problem is, or the question is, we plant it or not. That's why sweet corn and feed corn is totally different. In Malaysia scenario, sweet corn is more expensive compared with the feed corn because for the human consumption. There's a reason why in Malaysia, most of the farmers, they prefer to plant the feed corn, but not the sweet corn. And I want you to look at what the scenario over here. Maybe it's different. You plan it, but is it sufficient or not? I believe this, we try to target on the SDG, as what mentioned by Prabhayu just now, SDG 2, SDG 12, as what I try to emphasize on. And next slide, if you look at the con, we try to emphasize on the energy source, especially the metabolizable energy. Later on, I will share with you more what is ME, metabolizable energy, and then how to make use of them. And do not forget corn. They also contain a lot of the nutrients. Beside the energy, they also contain fat. They also a major energy contributor. And do not forget, they also contain some of the minerals, even though their content may not be very much. But you can make use of those nutrients in order to calculate the least cost feed formulation, as what I mentioned just now. This is the balanced diet that we always emphasize on. In fact, I fully agree with Prabhayu just now. He should be here. Listen to my talk. And I really appreciate that he mentioned something about backyard farming. You see, backyard farming. When we talk about backyard farming, we are dealing with some of the community that do not have knowledge at all. Agree with me or not? But the thing is, as the university student or lecturers, normally we try to help them to formulate a good feed for them to feed to their chickens. Because the main thing, we want to ensure those chickens can grow up to the market weight within a shorter period in order to increase their salary monthly. Next slide. If you look at next slide will be the soybean. And I believe this is an important commodity. And everybody knowing that, because tropical country, sometimes not very easy to plant this plant. Normally we consider them as a temperate, plant. But I know that some of the places over here, they also plant this soybean. And they are heat resistant. However, next slide. If you look at their nutrient contents, go back to this the ingredient again, soybeans. The nutrient, sorry. Finish first. Okay, let me continue. I'm sorry. If you look at the soybean, the nutrient that we try to emphasize is on protein. However, we have forgotten some of the important nutrient, which is amino acid. That's why if you look at the slide just now, okay, the important thing is not only looking at the gross, the gross of the nutrient itself, but the most important thing is you need to make use of the digestible nutrients in order to formulate the feed more proper, more appropriate. Next slide. All right. If you look at these figures, I believe all the students have come across with this. And normally when I teach my students, I would definitely ask them, what is digestible energy? Some of the students, they can answer, but some of the students, they don't really understand what is digestible energy about. And then I want to look back, okay, whatever energy we measure from the raw material, those energy is gross energy. We need to take out the fecal energy. We need to collect their feces. And then in order to analyze their energy, in order to get the gross energy, and then later on, the nutrient of the gross energy deduct the fecal energy. You will get this digestible energy. All right. If you look at just now I keep emphasizing on the metabolizable energy, especially for chickens. Not for mammals, but chickens. Okay? They try to emphasize on metabolizable energy. And then you need to measure the urinary energy. However, the question is, in poultry, do they urinate or not? No. That's why if you look at the fecal energy, normally they contain very high uric acid. Their urine will turn it into uric acid. That's why you just need to measure the fecal energy, and then you can get the metabolizable energy. But today, we're still not able to measure the net energy yet, especially for poultry, because some of the study, they may not cover the heat increment. That's why, for example, like mammals in swine, normally they measure the heat increment, and furthermore, they try to use this net energy to formulate the feed more accurately. Next slide. All right. I purposely put down this slide in order to show the students, all right, especially when we look at the carbohydrate, protein, and fat. These are the three major components on the nutrient that we normally look at. Carbohydrate. If you look at the carbohydrate, some of the carbohydrate will be oxidized, will be digested, will be utilized as an energy. But some of the carbohydrate will be fermented. They produce gas. And later on, they will try to produce a volatile fatty acid or methane. And if you look at the excess carbohydrate, some of them may be deposited as fat. And if you look at the digested protein, they are very similar to the carbohydrate. However, their metabolism is totally different. And then if you look at the digested protein, oxidized protein will be digested, and then later on they will turn it into amino acid. However, some of the retained protein will be deposited as meat. Okay? And some of them, if there's any excess of those protein, will retain as fat for the protein lipogenesis. I'm not going to share with you some of the lipid or the biochemistry over here, because it's too tedious. All right, next slide. And if you look at the digestive tract of the chicken, I believe everybody know about it. Sometimes we consume them, for example, like gizzard, okay? If you look carefully, when they mention something about digestive amino acid, as what I show you the table just now for those nutrients, how do you measure them? How do you measure them? That's why if you look carefully, especially the anatomical structure of the poultry, you look at the small intestine. Normally, small intestine can be divided into duodenum, jejunum, ileum. And if you want to measure the standard ileal digestible nutrients, you need to collect the digester, especially from the part of macrodiverticulum. You look at the macrodiverticulum, a small dot there, okay, until the end part of the ileocecal junction. Okay, I do not have pointer. If I have pointer, I can show you. Ileocecal junction is a junction where you can see the colon and the cecum. Okay, all right. This is the part that you can collect the sample for your analysis. And this is very important. At least we can identify, okay, how much of the nutrient that can be absorbed by the animals. The most important thing is I would like to remind everybody, okay, don't formulate the feed based on the gross nutrient content. It will be wrong. It will not be accurate, and somehow it will be very costly. It is no longer as a least cost feed formulation. Next slide. All right. I haven't finished yet, digestibility. If you look at the formula, very complicated. Okay, actually it's quite simple. Every time when we conduct the experiment, especially for the feeding, digestibility, we need to always carry this kind of mindset. Okay? And another question that you need to ask yourself, can you collect all the feces from the animals or not? All. There's no wastage. Because you are doing something like digestibility. That's why if you look at what, I include some of the indicator. Should I? Can continue. All right. If you look at what the AID, the first formula, apparent ileal digestible. Over there, we can see the TiO2, right? That one is titanium dioxide. It's an indicator. This indicator is very important to indicate that how much of the feed passage through the small intestine has already passed to the end part of the small intestine. Duodenum, jejunum, ileum. Okay? This is a factor that normally we need to consider in order to calculate the AID, apparent ileal digestibility, more accurately. And then later on, we need to consider the basal endogenous losses flow, BL here. And then if you look carefully, I also measured the titanium dioxide. And later on, we can calculate the SID, standard ileal digestible. This is the more appropriate, more accurate, okay, calculation in order to help you to formulate the least cost feed formulation. Next slide. Next slide, please. All right. Today, I try to share with you some of the things that I think is very important. Indonesia produce a lot of the palm kernel cake. You are the major producer for the palm oil. And then second, Malaysia. That's why I think we should work together and then try to make use of some of the agricultural waste, especially from palm kernel. Because you see, palm kernel cake is a waste. Normally we think that we use it for ruminant, but we also can use it for monogastric animals. Unless you formulate the feed accurately. That's the reason why I try to revisit this topic, okay, again and again, because to me, our information that we have today may not be sufficient for a feed miller, for a village people to work something, to offer it to their animals. Next slide. Next slide. All right. If you look at what the palm kernel cake and DC, two things that I would like to emphasize. Next slide. And then if you look at what the crude protein, some of the report, they have already reported that palm kernel cake, they contain about 16.2 to 24.4% of the protein. But unfortunately, they are measuring the crude protein. Not 100% of the crude protein can be absorbed. Agree with me or not? You see, come to the feed, come to the nutrition, we have forgotten about something. Normally, we don't measure protein. Can you measure protein? We just only measure nitrogen through the Jalda method. Agree with me or not? Or Kelda method. Nitrogen, we try to revise our animal nutrition, okay? Kelda method. That's why we are measuring the N. And later on, we convert the N times 6.25 to crude protein. This is not the actual protein that can be absorbed by the animals. This is just only based on the calculation. That's why we have to think carefully, you know. And that's the reason why we try to revisit, recalculate, and try to think about the actual nutrient content in this PKC in order to help the industry or the farmers, to formulate the feed more accurately. Next slide. Okay, if you look at this slide, these are the general information that we have about PKC as well as decanter cake. Those are the amino acid contents. Next slide. And furthermore, we have to consider another things. I believe some of you may not be agree with me about this, especially PKC feed to the chicken. But the thing is, we need to thank the COVID-19. You know why? During that time, we have a lot of shortages of the raw material, specifically on the corn and soybean. That's why we need to revisit what exactly is food security about. Okay? And if you look at what the crude fiber for the PKC and DC, they are very high. Okay? Actually, they are good for ruminant, not really good for monogastric animals. And we need to improve them further. Next. If you look at what the fiber content over here, normally I look at what the ADF and ADL. They are more important because they are not able to be digested even by the ruminant. But for the monogastric animals, normally I look at what? NDF. Because some of the NDF can turn it into fermented NDF. That can be digested, can be absorbed by the animals. Next. All right. Later on, we try to think about something else. How to improve this agriculture byproduct. That's why we come up with the what? As solid state fermentation. If you still remember, just now Prabhayu mentioned something for the improvement of the agriculture, especially for food security. One of the major components is through biotechnology. This is one of the technology that we are talking about, solid state fermentation. That's why, next slide, we look at what the product produced. Next slide, please. We look at what the product produced from this solid state fermentation. We find out they are more nutritious, they are less expensive, and then low energy expenditure, lesser fermentation space, and easier control of contamination, and high reproducibility. Next slide. This is an experiment that we have conducted and we have already published in the Feed Science and Technology. Okay, Elsevier. And do not bother about the FCR, okay, but because this work was done, about 10 years ago, I tried to bring it back here to discuss, to share with you. If you look at what the PKC and FPKC, F means fermented. It seems like the FPKC, they are even better compared with what the normal PKC. Next slide. And if you look at what, these are the digestibility table, okay, I believe the organizing committee will share out this slide to you all. You have a look. Okay, next slide. Because the instruction mentioned that I only have 1 more minute to go. Okay, and next slide. The important thing is our recommendation for the poultry broiler, okay, when we try to ferment those PKC, we can include them up to 15%. And then for the normal PKC, we can only include them up to 10%. But sometimes it is okay, sometimes it is not okay. That's why normally I recommend it to the industry, 6%. Okay, next slide. In conclusions, cost of feed have always been a significant concern in poultry production. Palm oil byproducts such as PKC and DC are acceptable, okay, to be included in the ruminants diet, but may not be suitable to be included at higher level in poultry diets. Okay, but fortunately, when we conduct this kind of SSF solid state fermentation, we can include them up to 8 to 12%. Biodegraded byproduct in broiler feeding diets could improve the gut health. We have already documented these findings, increase the nutrient digestibility, and improve the bird's overall growth performance. Thank you very much.
Please give a round of applause for Professor Dr. Loh Tek Chuan for the informative presentation about the use of palm kernel cake in poultry diet. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will now move on to the discussion panel where we will have the opportunity to delve deeper into today's topics. So this is your chance to interact directly with our expert panel. So feel free to ask questions by raising your hand if you are attending offline, or submitting your questions via the chat if you are attending online. But please do not forget to mention or write down to whom you address your question to. Okay, we will now begin. Is there any question from the guests or the participants who is attending offline? Okay. The gentleman with batik, and then the lady at the back with, yes, the blue. Yes, after this, okay.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Pancar Hadimulya. I'm from the Agricultural Economics from Universitas Gadjah Mada. My first question is for Prof. Elena. It is fascinating for me talking about the climate change, especially in Indonesia. But my question is, we know that one of policy or solution to face or reducing the greenhouse gas emission is by carbon pricing. And we know that the carbon pricing is majority from the forestry, who are the main sector in reducing GHG emission. My question is it possible for agricultural sector becoming the sector who can reduce the GHG emission through the carbon pricing, and how to improve the role of agriculture in reducing the greenhouse gas emission? And then my second question is for Dr. Dian. Talking about the gurami in Indonesia is very a potential for gurami. If it is possible, gurami has a potential as a functional food, like for herbal purposes or health purposes, what is the challenge of the gurami in the functional food? And then the third question for Prof. Chem, you mentioned about the fermented palm kernel cake. It is new information for us about palm kernel cake, especially for me in agricultural economics. My question is, how long the fermentation takes is for the fermented palm kernel cake? Is there any differences from the fermentation time of palm kernel cake? Thank you.
Okay, we will now start beginning to answer the question. Maybe, okay, maybe Professor Law can go first. Yes, answering the question.
All right, thank you very much. Congratulations to you first, because you are the winner for just now the quiz, right? Okay, related to the palm kernel cake, as well as the solid state fermentation palm kernel cake. All right, in terms of their nutrient contents will be higher compared with the normal palm kernel cake, or without any kind of fermentation. And just now you also mentioned about something that normally we consider about, okay, how long is the fermentation process will occur. From our experience, we have already carried out, okay, from 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, up to 1 week. We do not want to go beyond that. The reason is, if you try to go beyond that, okay, in terms of the space, will be a big problem, especially for those who wanted to use palm kernel cake. I'm not just only targeting on the small farmer, I'm also targeting on the big farmer. I try to consider a lot of things, okay? And normally if you buy in bulk for the palm kernel cake, will be cheaper. If you buy those palm kernel cake in small quantity, normally will be very expensive, okay? Okay, to answer your question, for the fermentation, normally the ideal one will be 3 to 4 days. You can see the result. The nutrients, some of the nutrients, specifically on the protein as well as the amino acid, they will shoot up. Okay, and then later on, after 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, they will become plateau, flat, no changes at all. That's why to us, we try to go for 4 days instead of 5 days, 7 days. Because as long as you can speed up the process, normally the feed miller will be very happy. Farmer also will be very happy. Otherwise, you are occupying a big space, to store the palm kernel cake. This is not economical, because you need to pay for the rental, especially for the space. I'm not sure whether I answer your question or not.
Okay, thank you, Professor Law. Now we will move to the question for Dr. Dian about the challenge in functional food, gurami as functional food. Yes, okay.
Thank you for the question. First, the challenge in functional food, and especially in Chinese gurami and also in fish generally, the first challenge is that if we use the functional food, we use the feed in Bogor and we try in Magelang, we will have different results because the impact of the environment is very high. That's really make significant differences in the result. But if we can make a standard in the procedure in the farming, we make the SOP, maybe we can get more consistent results. But today, the results still mostly biolocated, not in general, like in Indonesia overall. Yeah, that's maybe a long way together, but we can achieve a better result if we use the functional feed. And Actually, not in giant gourami, but like in the shrimp and also in the marine fishes, the functional feed actually widely produced. We can get it just by in the commercial online shop. We can order it. And also there's a question that implication of energy deficiency. That's right? Oh, okay. Okay, that's fun.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Dian, for the answer. Then maybe we can have the answer from Professor Elena. Is she?
I'm here.
Okay, Professor Elena.
Yes, I'm here. About role of agriculture for reducing greenhouse gas emission. Yes, many ways for this. For example, in crop production, one way is transition from monoculture to crop rotation with grasses help to increase the amount of fixed organic carbon. For example, for 0.5 ton carbon per hectare per year. Other way is converting arable land into permanent pasture, increase carbon accumulation in the soil by almost 20%. Other way is afforestation of arable land. It's also increased the content in the soil about 3 ton carbon per hectare per year. And it's these ways we can use in European country in our climate. Also, maybe other ways. For example, genetic reduction of rice with changing structure of biomass of rice and maybe genetic selection of animal for agriculture. But this way is not our topic. In European country, we much use some ways with monoculture, crop rotation, afforestation, and using arable lands. If I answer for the question, if not, okay. I'm ready to continue.
Thank you very much, Professor Elena Volkova, for the answer. I hope you answered your questions. And then we will move to the question from online audiences. We have Bapak Eko Hendrawan. So he has a question to Professor Law. Considering the rising cost of feed in poultry production, how can the inclusion of agricultural byproducts like palm kernel cake and center cake reduce the overall production cost while also maintaining the nutritional adequacy? Please, Professor Law.
All right, thank you very much for the question, Pak Hendrawan. I like this question. Okay, I believe some of the people may came across with this problem. You see, when we use the palm kernel cake or DC, sometimes it may not be able to reduce the overall production cost, mainly because of the PKC and DC. They do not have very specific nutrients that contain. You have to top up with some other things. For example, PKC and DC, normally they have a very low metabolizable energy. That's the reason why normally we need to add in more oil, especially the palm oil. I'm not sure here. I think normally we use palm oil as one of the energy source for the feed formulation. The only thing is I would like to emphasize is, okay, the nutrient contents that for the PKC and DC, so far we do not have any kind of the specific nutrient contents that we can refer to. All the feed formulation that we have, okay, normally when we use the PKC, DC, we just only guessing based on the gross nutrient that they have. That's the reason why when come to the feed formulation, we have some problem. We will find out the cost of the whole feed per kilo will be more expensive than the normal conventional feed. This is not what we want, okay? And you see, as what I mentioned it to you, during the COVID, okay, there's a lot of the logistic problem happen. We are not able to import some of the raw material. That's why we make use of the PKC and DC. In fact, during the COVID, I'm still working in the farm. Okay, in Malaysia, they're allowed. If you are dealing with animals, you are allowed. And we try to identify the actual nutrient content in this PKC and DC. And then later on, we formulate the feed accordingly. Least cost feed formulation and balanced diet. Okay? And then we find out at least they are able to replace some of the imported raw material, for example, like wheat pollard. You see, wheat pollard, sometimes they are something like to make the whole formulation nicer. I'm not sure whether you come across with the feed formulation or not. This is normally what we do. Okay? And normally when you make use of, especially the fermented PKC, normally you can have a cheaper feed cost, at least 2 cents, ringgit Malaysia, 0.0 per kilo. If let's say you produce 1 ton, you can save about 20 ringgit. To some of the people, they say that, very cheap only, not much. But I tell you, those big feed miller, if they produce thousands of tons per day, normally this is costly. If, let's say 1 month, you can save nearly about 20,000 ringgit Malaysia. That's why we look at the quantity. Don't look at the small, ringgit Malaysia. I'm talking about ringgit Malaysia. Rupiah, I think you need to times 3,000, okay, in order to get the actual value locally. And then, I'm not sure, Pak Eko, whether I answer your question or not. In order to reduce the overall production cost, go back again to the basic, least cost feed formulation. And then the formulation must be a balanced diet. This is what we try to emphasize on. In fact, normally I conduct the feed formulation classes for the farmers in order to make them really knowledgeable how to make use of the knowledge they have already have it, but make use in terms of their practical in the farm. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Loh, for the answer. And we still have one last question for Ibu Dian. What are the implications of energy deficiency and decreased antioxidant capacity associated with high carbohydrate levels in gurami fish specifically?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Pak Eko Hendrawan. The implication of energy deficiency in giant gurami after high carbohydrate levels treatment, of course, it will leading to reduce the growth rate. So the growth rate will lower, and at the end, because the antioxidant capacity actually decrease, that means the fish will vulnerable with the disease infection and also environmental challenges. So we need to improve, to adjust the feeding management to avoid the energy deficiency and also to decrease the antioxidant capacity. So the effect of high carbohydrate that at the end will reduce the growth rate, and also maybe if we keep treatment, maybe leading to mortality in the fish. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Dian, for the insightful answer. And the last question marks the end of our discussion panel and Q&A sessions. And I apologize for anyone whose question is still not answered because we have a very strict time. Okay, today we have heard insightful presentation for our distinguished guests. on how to utilize local sources and commodities in various fields to achieve sustainable development goals in 2030. First, we have heard from Professor Elena Volkova on the strategies to reduce greenhouse emissions through new approaches in modern agriculture. And from Dr. Dian Novitasari, we have heard how to use carbohydrate, especially pollard meal, as a feed ingredient for giant gourmet fish to open up the possibility of growing gourmet fish as a cost-efficient commodity in the future. And the last one, presentation from Professor Dr. Loh Tek Chuen, we have heard that palm oil byproducts such as palm kernel cake and the center cake could be used as a cost-effective and functional feed ingredient in poultry diet. And this, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our morning session. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our speakers for the inspiring talks, and hopefully it could help us in achieving the sustainable goals in 2030, and again to the participants for your engagement and thought-provoking questions. Thank you once again, and I, the moderator, will now turn the meeting over to our MC. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alifa, for bringing us to a very productive session today. Let's have a round of applause once again. And we would like to thank to all the speakers, Professor Dr. Insinyur Bayu Krishnamurti, Magister Sains, Dr. Dian Novitasari, Sarjana Perikanan, Magister Sains, Professor Dr. Loh Tek Chuen, and Professor Elena Volkova for sharing your expertise in this today's session. We also thank to all the participants for the interactive participation. Please have a round of applause to the speaker and to you all.
Dr. Dian and Professor Loh Tek Chuen, we would like to ask you to stay on the stage as we would like to present the appreciation certificate and plaque to you. For our speaker who are joining us virtually, Professor Elena Volkova, the certificate will be sent by email. And to present the certificate and plaques, we would kindly invite the Vice Dean of Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Tidar, Dr. Lilis Hartati, and Dr. Tri Suwarni. If you may come forward. Thank you. You may please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue to the next agenda, The attendees are welcome to have a break. Please note that after the break at 1 p.m., we will hold a parallel session of oral presentation on Zoom meeting and on the Faculty of Agriculture building in Sitotopo. The link of the Zoom meeting is on the screen and can be accessed on the WhatsApp group for presenters.
I'd like to remind the participants that to get the certificates, you should follow all the agenda from the opening until the closing. The participant need to fill in the attendance form that the link will be shared at the end of the parallel session on Zoom meeting and WhatsApp group. For the offline participants to get prepared for the next session in Sidotopo, please gather in front of this building to get on the bus, and the lunch will be shared in Sidotopo. In the meantime, you can check out our Students Expo in front of this building. Thank you. See you on the third International Conference on Agricultural, Nutraceutical, and Food Science. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Unggul dalam perusahaan berbasis agrokompek lokal menjadi semangat bagi kami untuk terus mengupayakan kemajuan di bidang pertanian yang produktif dan berkelanjutan.
Paketnya habis. Paket data harganya